Hello, my name is Joey Parada. Today I would like to talk about anti-intellectualism within the United States, something that's very deeply rooted in our national identity, and at the current moment, day by day, it is growing to be a bigger problem. I would like to make a point in this presentation to cover both parties because they have both created the environment where this issue can continue to thrive. Anti-intellectualism can be defined as either just distrust or an outright rejection of expertise. It's something that's ideological. It seems that in the recent years, being intelligent or educated can make people describe you as indoctrinated. Um, and it's not, your knowledge is not seen as a qualification, but it's just that you're elitist. Um, we're seeing people opting to trust their quote common sense over critical thinking and research. If you've been in the world in recent years, you've definitely seen this playing out. It has been framed as a partisan issue, but that's honestly a downplay, like that's downplaying the actual scope of the issue. Um, but we're also seeing people just use anti-intellectual as a buzzword, and I just want to make it clear that that is not what I'm trying to do. Um, it is not a partisan issue, it is a threat to democracy itself. So, this issue, unfortunately, is not a new thing. It kind of has been built into the foundation of this country as a whole. I've linked an article in my work cited by Liberty Magazine that points out that there's roots from even the Puritans or the frontiermen that early Americans also fell victim to this mindset. It has been believed that education is for the elites and that thinking is harmful and not for the average American. Um, this is not something that has disappeared. One of the other articles that I found on this topic, written by Kristen Trujillo, she explains that in the rural regions of the United States, anti-intellectualism has links to just being excluded. If you think about it, those communities have much higher poverty rates. If you just look at how our government has treated Appalachia in the past year with the hurricanes, they are a community that's often overlooked, so it should not be that shocking. So it would make sense that these people in these regions would not trust academia because they've been excluded. We cannot blame this entire issue on rural communities because that is destroying the point of talking about it in the first place. We have to also talk about colleges themselves, interestingly, and how neoliberal policies are actually doing real harm. I found an article by Virginia Dominguez where she was talking about um, how their policies have really just done damage to the institutions, um, playing a hand in tenure effectively disappearing in a lot of places, and how education is being treated like a product and we're the consumers, which I am sure that that is something that all of us can feel. Found another article by Bronwyn Davies where she discusses under neoliberalism, any critical thinking is a liability. So when these policies are being pushed, even inside of academic spaces, they're trying to get rid of intellectualism. But we can't just pretend that this is only like we need to discuss the actual politics of this. When you look at people like Gavin Newsom, where he pretends that he's progressive, then explain how it's progressive to criminalize poverty and how that itself is not anti-intellectual. How are you expecting people to learn anything when you're calling them criminals for being poor and homeless? He is treating people's very existence as a threat, but we have to remember that these politicians are not our friends. They will always choose capital gain over the people. So now that we've discussed anti-intellectualism on the left, we obviously have to get into Mr. Anti-Intellectual himself, our president. His entire both of his campaigns really, if you think about it, were just ran on weaponized anti-intellectualism. He's even proudly shouted out that he loves the poorly educated, and I guess we can't say that it is these people's fault if they genuinely are uneducated. But at the same time, if they were reading the policies, they would recognize that that's what's least benefiting them. Um, but it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But um, it's all strategic. I don't feel as though I have to explain how he is anti-intellectual because I am sure that we are all aware. And anybody who has used the internet has probably observed this being the case there too. I've attached an article by Brandy Lawless and Kristen Cole, where they dive into right-wing media and how they essentially bully the experts. But it's not just the right that's so the bullying is mostly on the right, but there are things that the left is doing that also could be described as anti-intellectual. If we look at the protests, I think that was last weekend, there were people bringing signs with memes on them. That is not that is anti-intellectual because you're making the entire movement look like a joke and like performance art. Um, and I think it is inherently anti-intellectual to not realize that with how heavily publicized these things are, this is what's going to appear in the history books, and you need to think critically before you do things. Simply being pretending that you're an activist for in a performative way is not activism. So, when it comes to skepticism as a topic when discussing anti-intellectualism, we have to remember that skepticism is not the same as outright denial. Um, Doubt is actually something that's necessary for democracy. We should be questioning politicians. We need to be holding them accountable. But that's not always what's happening. Just telling the experts they're wrong is not the same as that. Um, Choosing to be ignorant willfully is not the same as questioning the authorities. So, the consequence of all of this can be observed. Um, I've attached an article in my works cited by Scientific American discussing how rejecting science is what's leading to refusal to get vaccines, even, for example, during a pandemic, denying that our planet is dying and we're just watching it, and then also apathy towards humanitarian issues and genocide. Um, so this is the point where anti-intellectualism no longer is just like a casual mindset, but it is a threat to our public safety, and it is being paid with lives of humans and animals. And I mean, if we kill our planet, what are we going to do? So it goes without saying that there's not really an easy fix to this issue, but there are things that we can do in the meantime. One of the which is that we really need to make an effort to make intellectual spaces more inclusive, um, in terms of accessibility, um, like avoiding classism. And we need to stop treating it as a luxury to be educated, which obviously that seems very out of reach. But hopefully it's not being too optimistic to say it's possible. And we need to question the right things. We need to not just deny what the experts are telling us, but we need to hold people accountable for what they're saying. And we also need to call out our peers when they're being performative because that is encouraging anti-intellectualism. So, and when we're talking about issues like this, we need to recognize who benefits from the people lacking intellectualism. At the end of it all, anti intellectualism thrives when people are being alienated. Doesn't matter by who, but that is one of the root causes, in my opinion. But we need to push back with empathy. We can't just tell people they're stupid and then be done with it because that's not helping anything. Um, we should encourage people to use their critical thinking skills. I mean, if you think about it, like George Orwell would be rolling in his grave if he saw what the world is right now. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for their time and for hopefully taking this topic seriously. It's something that I am passionate about, as I am sure is very clearly translated through the screen. Um, we have to talk about it just because it is such a serious issue. And I really appreciate being able to share my perspective on it and hopefully prove a point that we need to tackle both parties when it comes to this issue. And we need to be uncomfortable talking about it because that is how change happens.